For most people, their introduction to astrology is reading their horoscope in a newspaper or magazine. But for those who decide to delve a little deeper, they quickly learn there is so much more to the movement of the planets in the sky. For centuries, royalty, celebrities, and world leaders have worked with astrologers to figure out the best way forward, as well as the timing of the things they'd like to achieve. Today's guest is an astrologer that I'm incredibly blessed to work alongside at the High Vibe Network. Bryan Scarborough, or Fixed Air Moon as he is also known, is going to share his 2022 predictions, as well as his journey from the life he was living to astrology. A story that I find absolutely fascinating, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Natalie. I'm happy to be here.
Now, we're going to get to the 2022 predictions a little bit later on, but I wanted to start with your journey towards astrology or into astrology, because it's not what you'd normally hear. So David Palmer, or the Leo King, who we both work with, he talks about astrology being a part of his life from a very, very young age. But for you, it wasn't like that.
No, it kind of came in came in a little later. I mean, there was definitely a lot that happened before astrology came in, but then once astrology came in, like, it kind of made the other stuff make more sense, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like synchronistic events after synchronistic event, and then it was like bang, astrology. It was like that was like the ultimate synchronistic event in my life, and then never looked back from there.
As I was researching for this, I was on your website and you talked about one of the big life changes that you had, which was your son Sterling being born. And that, I noticed, happened when you were 29.
He was born when I was 27, but
Oh,
he
was
was
he?
born right before I turned 28. And yeah, that was a big time in my life for sure, because it coincides with that Saturn return that, you hear so much about, 28 and
So
a half to 30.
for those that don't know, what is a Saturn return, or what does it mean?
Yeah, so we're all born with Saturn somewhere in our chart, and depending on when you're born, like for myself, I was born at the end of 1989. Saturn was in Capricorn at that time. So Saturn's in my chart in Capricorn. It's in the 10th house. So what happens is Saturn takes 28 and a half years to come back around to its original position, and a little bit longer, or a little bit, right around that, depending on if your Saturn's retrograde or where it's at in the sign that it's in, but it'll come back to that sign every 28 years. So Saturn's on this 28-year cycle. So it's a big cycle in all of our lives where, you really hit like a level of maturity in your life. It's a big grow up moment. If you ask an astrologer, like, when do you become an adult? The astrologer is going to say after your Saturn return, you're an adult. In society, of course, it's like, oh, I graduated high school, I'm 18, I'm an adult now. And it's like, no, it's just your first nodal return when you think you have it all figured out. You get a lot of maturity and wisdom with Saturn returns, but it comes with choices, and it comes with adding more responsibility, and it comes with making decisions that are not easy to be made, because you have to, really choose a path when your Saturn return comes. And depending on how you were living your life prior, it can definitely be more, a little more seamless for one person, or a little bit more intense for other people. And of course, there's a lot of different ways to break down a Saturn return and how it would affect somebody. But the basic idea is it's your first big grow up moment where you really kind of step into your adult life, and sort of the mission, or, some of the bigger things that you're here to achieve. And it tests to see how in alignment you were, especially like between 18 and 28. Like, were you in alignment with what you were supposed to be doing, or do you have to turn a semi truck around in your life? So it can kind of, it's a big one. But, for me, I'm very grateful for mine. It was the best, change in life choices I've, I guess up until this point, that I ever had to make. So I guess it just depends. I may have some Saturn, privilege. It's kind of a thing. There's like Saturn privilege, it's Lord of my 10th house. It's in my 10th. It's with my son. My son signs Capricorn too. So, there was definitely some things in my favor, like Saturn in a night chart. Saturn at the bottom of your chart coming back for a return can be a little more difficult. then or if your sun's in the sky up at the top of your chart when you're born, the Saturn return tends to be a little bit more simplified. And then of course, if your sun happens to be the bottom of your chart, it can be a little bit more intense, but that's not always the case. But there are a lot of different ways, like I said, to break that down. But that's kind of Saturn return in a nutshell, is big choices that you have to make for more of a karmic purpose. If you believe in karma or whatever, we came here to do, it's like either hitting the brakes and turning around, or kind of continuing on a path that, you get to kind of make this choice of a rare route or a traditional route, I guess you could say.
What were you doing with your life sort of prior to astrology in terms of work and sort of just living your life?
Yeah. So when I was 18, graduated high school, I decided I wanted to give, community college a shot, even though I hated school. But, it seemed like the right thing to do. Everybody kind of pushes you, go to college. So I was like, all right, like, I'll try this community college thing out. And didn't like it. Lasted about a semester and a half, and snowboard season was coming around. So I pretty much just dropped all my classes and decided to move to Tahoe, which was pretty close to where I was from. And I just became a snow bum for a good 4 years and lived on the mountains and snowboarded every day. And then at about 23, I got a job installing synthetic turf athletic fields for a company called Field Turf. And I did that job up until I was 28 years old. Actually 29. I ended up quitting the very end of 2019. But I kind of made that like a, 20 year, in my 20s, it was my career. And I progressed pretty, as far as I could possibly really progress in that trade, as far as an installer would go. And yeah, I hated it. I hated it, but it paid the bills and I made good money. But I definitely woke up every day like, is this really life? Is this really what I'm gonna do this every day? Was starting to feel more and more disconnected to it the older I got. And it was that Saturn return, which the 10th house where my Saturn sits and where Saturn rules in my chart, I have a very strong Saturn. It is about career, so I had to make a big career, change in my life at that time. It was astrology.
And I think the life that you described is what so many people do live, because it's what we're told we have to do. You were in a pretty major car accident.
Yeah. Yep.
Can you tell us about that? Because this is what blows my mind.
Yeah, that was so, to give some context to that, I wasn't doing astrology when this happened. It was in 2016. But when I went and looked back after I'd gotten into astrology, I realized, pretty quickly that was when Pluto was crossing over all my planets in Capricorn, my sun at 10 degrees, all the way up to my Saturn at 15 degrees and retrograding. So there was a long period of time right in there where, when Pluto crosses over your personal planets, it's not something everybody gets to experience. So really only, since I was born with Pluto in Scorpio in my life, people that I know or that are younger than me, they'd have to be like Scorpios, Sagittarius, Cap, and then upcoming to Aquarius as we move into 2024, 2025 and get Pluto there. But it's not something everybody goes through is Pluto on your personal planets. And it completely rewrites the program of that energy that your planet holds in that particular space. And it really was like, Pluto rules death and rebirth also. So it was a death and rebirth moment. I didn't actually die or have like a, go out and come back from life. But to go into what happened with the accident, I was driving to that turf job I was talking about, and it was about 5 a.m, and I was going through this town on the way to the Bay Area. I used to commute on Mondays and Fridays to and from the Bay Area, which was about a 3-hour drive. And a car behind me hit my work truck, right on the back end, which I was going about 85 miles per hour. I was going fast in the fast lane, cruising to work. And this car just hits the back of my truck, and it was instant. Like I was sideways, like didn't have time to think. There was no thinking. It just happened. And the moment I went sideways, the truck grabbed and I rolled from the fast lane over on the far left all the way across the lanes. Probably, I mean, it felt like 4 times, maybe not. But I hit a semi truck that was driving in the slow lane and then like spun around, maybe flipped again. I don't know. It's hard to kind of tell what really happened, but it was a lot of rolling, and eventually stopped and stopped on the wheels. And I was completely conscious the whole time. I never got knocked out. I nothing, really, I didn't even get injured. It was very crazy. But anyway, sat there, got up, and like stopped, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, is somebody gonna hit me? Like, what's all the other traffic doing? And I was like, am I still here? Like, patting myself down, like, am I all here? And I was. So I was like, okay, I need to get out of this truck. So my door was too smashed up to get out of, and the passenger window was all broken out. So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna go out that way. Seems safer than going into the middle of the highway anyways. So I crawl out the passenger window, and the truck driver of the semi truck that I hit, he's running up, and he looks like he just saw a ghost when he sees me climbing out of that truck. And he's like, oh my God, I can't believe anybody's getting out of that vehicle. Like, he couldn't believe it. He's like, is anybody else in there? I was like, no, it's just me. And I get out, and he's like, and you're okay? And I was like, I mean, yeah, I'm okay. But that was a crazy moment in my life, and it happened with Pluto in all of that area. And also, some other things happening too, but I think mainly Pluto. And what that did for me was, before that moment in my life, I was very, you could say, atheist. Like, I definitely didn't have faith. I didn't really believe in God. All I knew at that time was like religions,
Mhm.
whether it was Christianity or, whatever. And I never ever resonated with that form of connection. It just always felt wrong or didn't align with me, which is probably my Uranus in the 9th house. Like, I'm just like, that organized religion, just, is that it? Like, I don't know. So that was the first time where all that happened, and I got out, and I had like a moment where I literally looked up at the sky, and I felt like, wow, I think it was the first time I was like, I think I have like angels around me. And I felt like I had a purpose, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I definitely should have died. Nobody, like you don't really see accidents like this happen where people are just okay. Like, at least like some crazy injury or something. So it was definitely this very, like, the first time I really felt like the divine and God and angels and, protection around me. And it definitely changed my whole life and perspective from that moment. It wasn't like a instant, like, jump into all these different spiritual, modalities or anything like that. It was definitely just like it gave me faith. Like, it just opened me up to like believing that there's something more going on than the mundane reality that I was already pretty sick of. So had that moment, and then that just snowballed over a couple years into like seeing UFOs and like all these different like mind bending kind of things happening in my life that just definitely started having me question, a lot of the way I was living my life and believing. And there's a big belief shift, which ultimately I think that, and, getting into the alien stuff, because the aliens also were a big, as crazy as it may sound, they were a big part in getting me to this point. It was aliens that were like coming through and, and telling me like, you need to raise your vibration. The world's about to go through a very crazy shift. So you should, figure out how you can do that in your life to raise your vibration. So I ended up, a couple years later, really getting into, I went vegan for a little while, and I quit chewing tobacco, drinking alcohol, smoking weed, doing, anything that I was doing, because I just wanted, and I started meditating a lot, like everything. I put like a lot of intention into just raising my vibration. And I did that for, a good 6-7 months from 2018 into 2019. And at that point, about October of 2019, I realized that I need to, like, I had raised my vibe. I could feel it. Like I was, vibrating at a higher just place within myself. And it was, the happiness and feeling like there was purpose, and, I had joy and love and compassion like never before. And that's when I really wanted to do something healing. So my first step was, I was like, I really felt, I resonated a lot with Reiki healing. So I wanted to do Reiki, and I started taking some classes online and reading some books. And I ended up finding a mentor that had done Reiki on me before. And she didn't even want to take me in. It was so funny. She was like, I don't know, this guy seems like maybe he's just going to be trouble, or is he actually serious? So she was like, let me think about it. And then she called me back like 2 days later, and she was like, all right, I'm going to be your mentor. Like, your guides wouldn't leave me alone. It was pretty funny. And then, so I started with her, and I got like my Reiki 1 attunement, and it was a day after that. And I was already getting into tarot, but I still wasn't really in, like, astrology was still off the radar. And the moment I got that Reiki 1 attunement, the next day, I ended up going to the Bay Area to do that job I was doing. And I was in a hotel room, but I was listening to some kind of healing music. I don't remember exactly what frequency or whatever, but I fell asleep listening to some like high frequency, like sound healing music. And when I woke up, and it was on YouTube, so it kept like auto playing things.
Mm-hmm.
And when I woke up, it was the Leo King. It was David Palmer. And I woke up at 3:33 and heard this dude's voice. Never seen him, never heard of him before. And I was like, oh, 3:33, tarot reading, Capricorn. Well, I'm awake, and this seems like it's probably important, because numbers were finding me like crazy then. So I was like, okay, definitely going to pay attention to this. I was also about to go through a divorce. Like, marriage was not good at that point. Reading was really good. It was Deep Love Tarot, which is synchronistic in itself that I do that show with David now. It's like,
Absolutely.
it's like, what, so life's funny like that. But great reading. I was like, all right, I'm going to subscribe to this channel. And no idea, just thought, cool tarot dude, sweet. And another tarot reader that's a dude, I resonate with him, awesome. This was back when he was still putting Deep Astrology on YouTube, and the next show he did was Deep Astrology. And I'm not even kidding, the moment he started talking about astrology and channeling it, I was just, it felt like everything, like that was the moment. Like I heard that, and then it was either that episode or the next one that he put out, that he dropped his love masterclass for the first time that he was going to do. And I was like, oh, well, that's a sign. Like, I was already like so enthralled and just all over it. And then class. So I was like, all right, class, boom. And then the pandemic started, or whatever it is. So anyways, the world kind of shut down, and I just kind of really took every bit of my energy and focused it on learning. And then in that love masterclass, he gave a discount for all of his other classes. And I was like, oh, another sign, sweet. So I just went full on for, about a month. I went through those courses so fast. Like, after he finished the live ones, like I finished all of his other ones quick. And then I would just play them on repeat when I was like driving. Like, I mean, I literally just submersed myself for it was fast for probably 3 months straight. Just nothing but astrology. I wasn't listening to music. When you talk about getting obsessed with something, I got obsessed. And yeah. And then April came around, and I was like, I'm going to start putting out horoscopes, and I'm going to do this. It just feels right. I feel like I can do it. I learned it quick. Nothing was like hard for me to learn. Everything was just, felt like I already knew it in many ways. It was like just a remembering, like, oh, okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then just went for it. And yeah, decided to quit my job, and had gotten the divorce by then. So it felt like this moment of like, if there was ever a perfect moment to just go full on for this, new path, it was then. And that was, my Saturn return in a nutshell.
What did friends and family think as you sort of changed your life and quit your job and became so focused on the astrology and tarot and all the other sort of things that you now do?
Well, they thought I was crazy when I stopped drinking alcohol and smoking weed. Like they couldn't wrap their head around it. Like, you're just gonna stop that? Because I wasn't like an alcoholic by any means. Like I didn't have like an issue. They're like, why would you stop? You just drink like when we go out every now and then. Like, what's the problem? And it's like I can't really like explain it to the, it's like I just feel like it was just intuition. Just like I don't know. It's not there anymore. Like I don't even want to do it. Easiest thing I ever stopped doing. So they were already kind of questioning me then, but then yeah, when I quit that job and was like, I'm going to do astrology, and however long it takes, I'm just going to grind out and not stop, and try and make, some wave or get seen or whatever, it took. I'm just doing it. This is my chance. And if I go back to that life, I probably won't be able to do it at as high of a level. And they thought I was absolutely insane. I had like so much shade thrown my way. I will say that the biggest supporter throughout all of it was my mom. She was just like, she couldn't believe it, but she was just okay with it. She was just like, wow, I guess if that's really what you want to do, like, I don't see why you'd give up $100,000 a year job to do some astrology. Doesn't really make sense.
I will say us Aries, because your mum's an Aries as well.
Yeah.
The one thing that we're a lot of things, but we are loyal to the end. We will stand by our people, even if we don't understand. We'll tell you we don't understand, but we will sit there and go, okay, if this is what we're doing, let's go.
And it's because she loves me so much. She was just willing to give me the shot. She was like, well, he's either gonna do it and make it happen or he's not. And I guess I'm just gonna let him go for it. So she supported me. Definitely got some weird looks from, people in my life, but whatever. Like that's the thing, is sometimes you just have to not care about what people think. If you really feel like you have to do something for yourself, like you just have to do it. And it was a big grow up moment for me where I really just owned that I'm going to do this.
And when you do things like this, I think you really learn who your true friends are, because your true friends will support you even if they think you're crazy. And I had the same thing moving over here. I had an established life in Australia and I was applying for this visa, and it's a process, and it's a brutal process. And I had an established career. And it was a good career, and I had friends and family and a home and all of that. And letting it all go, there were certain people in my life saying, it'll never work. Why are you doing it? Don't waste your time. Don't waste your money. It's never going to happen. And I had to I didn't step away from all of them, but I just had to say to them, but this is what I need to do for me. And if I fail, at least I don't have a question. And for me, that's what a lot of it was. And it sounds like you went through something very similar, just with a different journey.
Yeah, totally. Super similar. And then what I did find out is like, yeah, they definitely were like talking about me and definitely thought I was crazy, but they're all still friends in my life. They all still do love me and are happy for me. And I think they couldn't believe that I even made it this far. So it was definitely like, it always feels good, I guess, to prove haters wrong. So it's like eventually you kind of reach a point of like, you didn't believe that I could do it, but I did
Here
it,
I am.
And I don't like to rub it in their face either and be like, I told you I'd make it. But it's like, kind of set that example for people. Like, if you want something bad enough and you want to pursue it and dedicate to it, don't let people hold you back. Just go show them it's possible. And that can go a long way. And
I think the other thing is, I always say to people, it's not about the money. And when you start doing something new, often there's no money there. And, I've worked for free and I've done things to prove myself and pay my dues. And I remember when I started out modeling, I had to do a bunch of free jobs. And even when I was really successful, I did a certain number of charity shows every year because that was my way of giving back. But at the same time, moving over to a new country, you essentially have to start again. And people sort of go, oh, well, you can't do that. But it's taking that risk and loving something enough that you will work for free. Everything else falls into place.
Yeah. So true. That's how I started was, you know, I was like, I'll do donation readings, and I was doing them on Facebook for people and just seeing who was down. Basically,
And
like any Facebook friends I had, or I was just like, I'm going to do astrology and tarot. If you want a reading, I'm doing them for donation based. And some people wouldn't donate and I didn't get mad or upset, you know, and then some people would give me $5 and some people would send me 100. And it was just like, did that for a while and got more confidence. And then, you know, started setting, you know, what I thought the value was supposed to be. So just,
so
yeah, building.
that's what I was curious about, because I mean, you've already said that you did all of David's courses. So you started with the Love Masterclass. Did
Mhm.
you need, so you didn't need to do the tier 1, 2, and 3 of
Oh,
astrology to understand the masterclass, or it was because you had that sort
no.
of deeper knowing that you were able to do that one first?
That master class that he put out was amazing. Like it was the best like first video I could have ever watched. You know,
Okay.
he went so in depth and then also started from the bottom and worked his way up. He's a
Mhm.
very good teacher.
He's a phenomenal teacher.
I'm so glad I did all the others, like, because you can never get enough, you know, different knowledge. It's never ending. It doesn't stop. So it's like it stops when you decide to stop learning in the end. But no, it was the perfect first intro.
The
Um,
reason,
yeah.
so the reason I asked, so anyone that watches David that wants to do a course, David speaks quite quickly, and especially when he's channeling and he's doing his videos, because he's getting the information out there. But I'm working my way through tier 1, which is the beginner's astrology, and he is so patient and so wonderful in transferring that knowledge and educating people. So I'll do the Love Master class when I've done tiers 1, 2, and 3 of this one, because that's the way my journey's going. But I was curious about how you sort of developed that confidence. So how long did you do the sort of donation-based readings for before you felt confident enough to say, this is what my time is worth?
Probably about a month. So it was, I definitely moved quick. Some people, you know, might think that's crazy. You know, I don't know, you know, it just, I felt like I was doing it at a high enough level that I could charge, you know, from responses that I was getting back, and was starting to do horoscopes every day. And I was starting to build a little following on YouTube. And it wasn't big, but people were definitely like interested and people kept watching. And so I was like, all right, there's something here. And if I'm gonna, you know, do this, I have to make some money, or else how am I gonna live, you know? So it was just having the confidence to say I was worth it. And I did that pretty quick, which was a big moment in my life too, because I definitely would say I'd struggled before in my 20s about knowing my worth, you know? So that was another sort of big grow up, even spiritually, for me to even be like, no, I'm, you know, I can't just do donations forever. Like I gotta let the universe know that I'm worth this. And that is when everything picked up. Like the moment I set a price for myself, which wasn't a lot. I think I started at $80 an hour, but it was like, at least I know I'm going to get that.
Absolutely. And I think that's a lesson that everybody has to learn through their 20s. On your website, so you obviously do tarot, you've got the astrology. And I want to say, with your readings that you do, so you do the dailies and you do the weekend reports, and you've also do the weekly reports. The thing that I love, whenever people think about spirituality, or these people that sort of delve into astrology or are astrologers, we think of these sort of breathy voices in caftans and cheesecloth shirts and things like that. And for me, what attracted me to David's readings were, he's a disruptor. He's loud and brash, and you know, he says it as it is. And he always says, this isn't grandma's astrology. And with your readings, I find there's such a strong divine masculine presence, but there's none of this breathiness, and there's, you know, you're not a disruptor in the same way that David is. You're certainly sitting in your own space when delivering the astrology. And for me, that's the sort of reading that I'm attracted to. And everybody has these different elements that they need in order to get their information. But for me, I think it's such a refreshing thing in this space.
Yeah, I would agree. I think every astrologer has their own way of delivering the message. And yeah, I mean, I always resonated with David too, because he was a disruptor. And there's something about, there's always been that built into me too, with an Aquarius moon and a Sun Uranus conjunction. Like there is something about, like, I don't want to do the traditional stuff and the way everybody else is doing it. So it was interesting finding David first as an astrologer, really, but then trying to learn from others as I went. And I was like, oh, thank God I found him first, or I probably wouldn't have liked astrology. Like, kind of like that, you know?
And that's the whole thing. I traveled with a girlfriend a little while ago, and each morning we would both be listening to the people that we enjoyed listening to. And so we had a trade-off. She would play her video first and we would listen as we were getting ready, and then I would play mine. And for her, she likes that softer approach. Whereas for me, I enjoy the stronger, more masculine delivery of things. And it's lovely to see astrology moving into this space, and that there are men like yourself and David who are finding your spots in all of this and holding that down. Just an observation.
Yeah, I think it's important right now. Just when you look at, we're all living with a Chiron in Aries right now. There is like this wounded masculine energy on our planet, and wounded in a sense that it's either, masculine energy not wanting to stand up in that full identification of itself, or whether it's a victim sort of mindset that's going on. There's something about the astrology right now that says that, that's where the gift is. Like, that's where people can really take a hold of their lives right now, is by defining a way forward, and not being so sensitive. And I guess my horoscopes, I definitely try and stay grounded and bring a, strong spiritual message to the table. But I also try to like tell people how it is, but say, yeah, this is, what it is, but this is what you can do with it. Like, you're not limited to anything. Like, yeah, there's crazy stuff and the world might be going crazy, but that doesn't mean that spiritually and as an individual, you can't level up. Like, every day is a chance to level up. Every astrological transit is a chance to level up. So instead of just like, harping on craziness or chaos, yeah, that exists in our universe, but there's something that we can all take from that to be stronger, to define a life in a direction that's more, whether it's individualized to yourself or what feels really called, you can kind of use this stuff to tune into that. And I guess that's where I kind of go with it too. And I would say David goes too. And I would say not many others go there.
No, it's interesting working with the two of you and hearing you guys talk about the astrology that we're seeing and facing, and then tuning into some of the astrologers that would be considered your grandma's astrology, and listening to them, and the messages are so very different. And I find it really interesting. And for me, I don't want to live in a space where somebody's saying everything's going to be lovely today and this is what it is and it's all airy fairy. I want to know what's happening in terms of the energy, because out of everything, even the terrible situations, there are positives. Out of 2020, 2021, there have been incredible things that we've seen and that some of us have been able to manifest for ourselves personally. And I think that's, when you know what's going on, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between, you're able to sit there and go, okay, I have to find the magic in this, which leads me to your website taught me something today. And I would have thought that this was something I would have known, but Magick with a K.
Yep.
Can you explain that?
Yeah. Magick with a K, Magick, is real magic, alchemy. It's the magic that we all possess. It's what really can connect us, and finding that. And it's not imitation. And magic with just a C, if you look into that and the Hermetics and some of the ancient work done on that, it's imitation magic. So you're looking at like card tricks and pulling a rabbit out of a hat and, sleight of hand stuff, smoke and mirrors, if you will. But magic is the real alchemy of, lead into gold, which is a metaphor for our own body. we feel like we are born into this lead physical substance, but we can really alchemize ourselves into gold in this life. And I think that's part of our, evolutionary process, is to try and figure that out. But we always forget when we come back here. But that's real magic. So I always make sure I put it with a K, because I like to support the real magic and not the imitation magic. So when I even talk in horoscopes about magic, it's always with a K. It's always like that divine magic spark that we all have, to realize that we're a magician, just like the magician card in tarot. We have the capacity and every tool on the table in front of us, and it's just up to us to use those and to identify them and to wield that power, of course, with the responsibility and identification of what it is we want with that power.
I love everything about it. And from this moment forward, everything in my life will also be magic with a K, because I think it's the most wonderful thing. And just changing that little sort of thing in our life can shift so much. I wanted to touch on, before we get to the predictions of 2022, manifesting and manifestation. And you are the king of manifestation, because you obviously had David as your teacher, and then we had a live event at the studio, which is still up for sale on the High Vibe network. But you came down to work with us for that, and it was a perfect fit in terms of the crew that are at the studio and just the vibe of everyone down there. And we were sort of saying to you then, you need to come down here full time. And the response was, if I can manifest it. And
Yeah, that's what I said.
Not even 2 months later.
Not even a month. Or
No.
I guess it was, actually it was probably like 3 weeks. And then just after a month, I made the move. But yeah, it was a quick one.
So we all have ways that we believe manifestation works. And I think that there's more than one way to do it. But for you, what's your approach to manifesting?
Beliefs. I think it comes down to a strong belief and a strong feel, but we take ourselves out of the ability to manifest by these stories or these conditionings in life, or certain things that we tell ourselves or people told us in our life that limit us. So I think what's really helped me manifest over the last couple of years is, whenever I really want something, and I don't know if, maybe it's common that people do this. I definitely do. Is like, I'll say, oh, I really want this, but, or, I'll but, or, something myself, and I can't, I would limit myself because of a story or, some kind of conditioning or program that I was running. And what I noticed was, when you can change your belief, change your story, you can make it happen. That's part of the magic. That's part of the manifestation, is really feeling it and believing it, instead of believing it, but like you gotta really, believe it. So I had to change the story. And when the moment I changed the story, it was instant. It just happened. So, we all tell ourselves some kind of story, but that's the beautiful part of, beliefs in general, is they were never meant to be fixed. If you look at Sagittarius and Jupiter, that is beliefs and a story in our life, and it's mutable. It always evolves, it always changes. And that's where more beliefs and more faith can come in, that can really, have a positive, because Sagittarius, Jupiter is positive too. They can have a positive effect on your life. So, we got to be willing to change stories, change gears, and be mutable in life. And that's where you can let magic into your life. And that's where you can, I think, attract the value of life that you really want, is by feeling it, believing it, and almost feeling, as if it already exists. And that got me here. So I guess it works.
And everyone at High Vibe is so happy that it got you here, because I mean,
oh my gosh, I know. I'm so grateful. I love it here. And like the family, like, you guys are just like my family. And it's been such a, like, the moment I got here, even for the event, like, I just feel so connected. It was never awkward or weird. It's just like instant chemistry, and let's do it,
we joke a lot on the shows that or before we sort of start filming, that it feels like you've been at the studio forever. It really does. It just feels like you were always a part of our lives. And I can't imagine day-to-day life without going backwards and forwards with you. So personally, I'm very pleased that you manifested what you have so far, and I can't wait to see what you do moving forward. Getting on to 2022, we're obviously already in it. And for me, I don't know if your observations are the same. In 2020, it was all about COVID and the pandemic and the world changing from what we were used to. 2021 became all about the vaccine. And towards the end of 2021, I kept saying to people in my life, I'm curious what 2022 will be. And they said, well, what do you mean? We already know. And I said, no, because the theme of 2020 was very different to 2021. So as we're stepping into 2022, I don't believe it's going to be just, it's a continuation, but it's not the same. So far for me, I look at it and go, this seems to be about vaccine passports, digital ID, and everything sort of surrounding that. And obviously we've also got the whole war element, and there's plenty of talk in the media about World War III being a very real possibility. So in terms of the astrology, what do you see sort of coming for the rest of 2022?
I would say that it seems likely to me that war becomes the main focus. And I think I probably would have agreed with you that it was going to go more the vaccine route going into it. But that's where, you know, we live in such a strange, like, Aquarian time, and we just got done with Jupiter in Aquarius and Saturn's in Aquarius, and we had, you know, the sun go through there just recently, and it's never what you think is going to happen. So there's always been in the back of my mind, like, okay, we're still in this time, and Jupiter and Saturn met on, you know, December 21st, 2020 at 0 Aquarius, and there's just these next 20 years have a level of unpredictability to them. There's something that we're not going to see coming. So there's always that built into when I'm thinking about these cycles right now. And then of course there's other cycles playing too, with Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn and Jupiter Pluto meeting in Capricorn. So we're dealing with these really 3 big cycles right now. Jupiter Pluto is about 13 years and Saturn Pluto is about 33 years, but that can depending on where Pluto's at. So there are these 3 big cycles playing in the background, and 2 happen to be Capricorn and the other one's Aquarius, and they're both Saturn ruled signs. So of course we're at this place of a lot of government power. Pluto's finishing up there. There's like power grabs. And with the South Node now in Scorpio, I think that everything right now is this sort of manipulative power grab for like the ultimate control. But then there's also this breakout, because that's what Aquarius does too. It's Uranus, it's past Saturn. Yes, Saturn's a ruler of Aquarius, but Uranus is the modern ruler, and Uranus isn't going to do what Saturn says. Uranus plays by its own rules. So there's also another level of where we're going, where people are going to start individuating and really tuning into the frequency that their tribe is on. That's where you think we're going to get groups and going into a future. But you got to really find what your frequency is right now and what tune you're trying to play coming into this year, because there is going to be a lot of war. And I think we are at this shift where there's a lot of war stuff going on. Just Pluto getting ready to come into Aquarius. Last time that happened, Revolutionary War. Neptune's getting ready to come into Aries in 2024. Neptune in Aries was Civil War. Uranus in 2024, 2025 is coming into Gemini. That was World War II. And they're all coming around at the exact same time in perfect, like, sextile triangle alignment, which is beautiful and amazing to just think about from an astrological perspective, that all of these events are hitting at the same time. And there is this kind of focus with the sextiles and everything kind of pointing towards Neptune, which will be coming into Aries, which is sort of this really powerful spiritual identification, if we're willing to see it and not miss our chance, not miss our, or overlook how powerful we actually are, and how we can take things to places we've never gone before and come to new understandings of life. But we have to do it with this this crazy kind of world and this crazy reality that's going to be taking part all around us. So that's a little bit of the part of what we're seeing with, I would say, Jupiter, Neptune, and Pisces, which we haven't seen since 1856, which was a crazy time in history, with propaganda and, you know, fraud going on and division. So we're seeing that mixed with some of the war, and we're seeing we're not seeing the whole picture. So when it comes to the war stuff, I still think we're at a point now where we got to just kind of take in the information, but we don't want to get too sensitive towards anything because we don't know what's going on. So stay as informed as you can, but you know, there's also this Saturn, you know, hopefully in Aquarius, that's helping us become more mature about what we fully give our, you know, attention to, and what, you know, fully takes that. So with that said, coming into all these big war transits, it's very interesting. I think that there is a big shift to that, and I think that also it's a lot of it is about money and power right now. So was the COVID narrative still making money, or did it kind of dissolve a little bit? What's the next way to get, you know, money? War always is about money.
And
So
war makes a lot of money.
It makes a
which is
lot
what
of
I
money.
think a lot of people don't realize, more so for the governments and entities
Right.
that are attached to
Right.
the governments. We see a lot on social media, people talking about the Great Awakening. Do you believe we're in the midst of a Great Awakening, or is that just
100, yeah. No, I think, yeah, 100% I do. I think that's the beauty of that sextile triangle that's building to Neptune, is there is this very powerful spiritual identity that many people are going to take, that is this awakening, and it is this empowerment, that's going to give us a new way forward. But I do think there's this split. You know, Dolores Cannon was talking about it for a long time, the 3D 5D split. David's talked about it, a lot of channelers and people have talked about it, and it feels so, it seems more apparent than ever. I think it did with 2020 and COVID, but it just seems like every year that we keep progressing, it's so clear that there are people living right now that are not in fear, that are not sucked into the stories and the smoke and mirrors of reality. And of course, some people that are sucked into that story think the other people are crazy, you know, but then it goes vice versa, because the people not sucked in are thinking the same thing, like, no, you're crazy for going that route. So there's the duality part that's going on right now. But yeah, I would say that with everything that the dark does to manipulate for power and money and control, more people are waking up. And a lot of that has to do with the ages and where we're at on the sine wave of the ages, and this great galactic plane that is the cusp of Pisces and Aquarius. And the fact of the matter is, like, we're on crazy big cusps in our life right now, but ultimately we're moving into a level of consciousness that hasn't been experienced here in 28,000 years. So a very long time, but that's where we're going. We just have to get through these cusps to get there. And I think people are realizing that they're at this cuspy moment in their life where they're making a lot of big decisions and big choices about what reality they actually want to live in.
Another thing that we hear a lot is, I just want to go back to normal. And then you hear people on the other side saying, we're never going back to normal. And I would agree with, we're never going back to where we were. Life has shifted too much for a variety of different reasons, whether it be people are now terrified of other human beings because of what we've been told and what we've lived through the last 2 years, or whether it's just people have sort of woken up to a point that they don't want to step back into that world where you work your 9 to 5 and do a job that you hate, versus chasing the things that set your soul on fire, and that allows you to live in a way which brings you so much joy and you've got everything that you need in your life. Do you think that as this shift continues, that life on the other side of it, even though it's not going back to what we used to know, do you see it as a better version of humanity and a better life that people will be living, or is it something that is a little bit questionable?
I think it comes back to there's two kind of ways that it's going to go. And you're either making choices right now where you're going to live a better life, or you're making choices right now that are going to enslave you. And I don't think there's a right, I'm not trying to say by any means it's a right or a wrong decision. I would connect more to the idea that every individual has already chosen their path from a higher perspective to come down here and live out. So who am I to say that that's not meant to be, or you're a bad person? Like, that's just what maybe a soul needed to encounter. You know, that was part of the evolution for that soul, is to go that way, and other souls chose this other way. So it's not like that I think one's right or wrong, but I do think, you know, I feel very strongly that many of us are going to figure out new ways to live a very abundant life. And whatever that means, it's not going to be like what you thought. It's not going to be like what, you know, in the 20 teens, we were all idolizing our future was going to look like. It's going to be different. That's done. So it's a matter of what we're willing to create and how we're going to do that and how we're going to come together to do it. And I think people are going to be some of the greatest, you know, assets in like our lives. Like, the people, the connections we have are going to be everything moving forward, because it's Jupiter, Saturn, Aquarius. Like, being smart and having the right connections and connecting to stuff that is, you know, intelligent and progressive and moving forward is going to figure it out. And if you're trying to go backwards or go back to the way the world used to be, it might last for a little while, but that is never going to fully, I don't think, resurface, you know, just kind of my opinion on it. I really do feel like we're going into two different timelines on the same plane, overlapping each other. We'll see. I mean, that kind of feels that way to me now, but 2022 is very interesting. There's a lot of big stuff coming this year, you know, so.
Just before I'm going to ask you about the big stuff, but do you think that people have a very romanticized image in their head of what the age of Aquarius is? Because we've got the song Age of Aquarius and we see it as peace and love. And I think a lot of people, when they picture Age of Aquarius, because of the song, they sort of go to the 70s and free love. And is that the ultimate vision? And is it just rough getting there? Or is the Age of Aquarius just nothing like we've been led to believe?
Aquarius is cold. Aquarius is the coldest, you know, it's the middle of winter. Yes, if you're in Australia or the southern hemisphere, of course, it's the middle of summer, but in the tropical zodiac, Aquarius is it's the coldest sign. It's as cold as ice. So you have to kind of be hardened in a sense, and you kind of have to be smart to get through coldness. And I think that Aquarius has a lot of amazing parts to it, which of course would be that we're all equal. We're all kind of from the same fabric, if you will. Like, it really is like win-wins for humanity. But it doesn't just start that way. Like, it really is breaking out of controlled situations so that it can disconnect from that to figure out better ways. So I think that, the Age of Aquarius is, you know, we're not even there yet. And honestly, the sun won't even ingress into Aquarius from a sidereal point of view until I think 2154. So nobody on this planet right now, in this life, this body, this avatar, is going to live through the age or live into the Age of Aquarius, you know, just is what it is. So we're on this great cusp, and it's edgy when you're on the cusp. And I don't know what that 2000 years is fully going to look like. I wouldn't mind coming back for it and seeing, but I think right now we're trying to deal with a lot of the Piscean stuff, a lot of the karma that we as a collective and individuals decided to deal with, is coming back around so that we can find new ways forward. And I don't know if we fully get to the peak of what that's going to look like, but I do think there's things to look forward to, with that being said. But I don't know. As far as like going into the Age of Aquarius, I don't know if it's that relevant, because we won't do that in this life.
And again, this is where a lot of astrologers sort of talk about things, and where people differ, because there are certain people that you listen to that say we're
Oh, I
entering
know.
it now, and then there are others that are saying no, exactly what you're saying. We're on the cusp and we're sort
Yeah.
of shifting
Yeah.
ages, but we're just not there. And also, people sort of think that you just step into it. And I think the way it was always described to me, it's almost like flying through, is it an airstream? In like when you're flying in an aeroplane, getting into the airstream and getting out of it is the bumpiest part of it. Like that's the roughest part, almost like the retrogrades that we go through.
Mhm.
The first day of a planet going retrograde and the first day of it coming out of retrograde are the worst, because
Yeah.
it's that shifting
And
energy.
cusps are like that too, because it's like, David teaches a great analogy. It's like when you walk through a door into another room, it's like stopping in that door jam. Like you're in maybe just a little bit, your nose or your hand or something's in the other room, but you're still kind of in the other room. You're like in between rooms, but the space is kind of small and weird. You're picking up energy from both. So yeah, it's a very interesting transition. I think for the ones that are willing to go about it with an open mind and not just an idealized fantasy of what it needs to look like, we're all going to figure it out. I think that's the beauty of Aquarius, is that Aquarius does figure it out. It will connect the dots, but it can't do that by doing everything the way it's already been done. It's got to look at things from another perspective. So the more we can disconnect from all the perspectives and all the programs and all the conditionings from the moment we were born and try and figure out other ways that actually resonate with wherever you're at energetically right now, frequency wise, you're going to get the information downloaded, because that's what Aquarius can do too. It will just, oh, here you go. Uranus is a great antenna. Aquarius is that frequency too. So we could definitely connect to where we're going, but only if we're willing to disconnect from where we've been. And I think that's hard, because it can feel very isolated and cold too. And
Well, letting go of what's been is always uncomfortable, because even though we know it can bring in incredible things, we're scared of letting go of what is comfortable and what we know. And it's taking that risk.
yeah.
You talked about some big things coming through 2022. What are the sort of main, just the big transits or the huge things that you see in 2022?
Well, there's a lot. There's a lot. But the big things that I'm really keeping an eye on right now are, one, Saturn's going to start squaring these nodes in Taurus and Scorpio, and that's going to be going on for a while. The other is the North Node and Uranus are going to meet up in Taurus, which is definitely going to shake things up, but in a good way. I think, when you follow the North Node, you're always doing things better. So this is realizing that there are very different ways to acquire value. The things that we have thought were valuable likely won't be valuable anymore. So it's about being open to figuring out new values in our life. And I think it's also about valuing people is going to be very important, and realizing how powerful people are in our lives, especially with Saturn and Aquarius getting squared by these nodes. That to me is like a big collective skip step when it comes to really getting serious about the connections in our life, really getting serious about people, really getting serious about the future and how to put things together and how to be smart, and how to also, not just be so heady and disconnected from the emotion, but to still use the feeling involved to let go. Because the South Node in Scorpio, this is where we can really want to obsess. We can really want to hold on to things that maybe they're toxic. Maybe they're, they've run their course. Maybe we've already graduated that class, but we still want to stay in the class because we like the teacher. Like, gotta move on. And Aquarius, the one thing Aquarius is good at is it's always going to move forward. It's not going to go backwards. So I think we're going to go through this big moment, especially with the solar eclipses that are coming. These solar eclipses kind of blow my mind. They're just big. We get one coming up April 30th that's going to be in Taurus, and that's going to deal with money. It's going to deal with a lot of finances. And that same sorrow cycle that we're coming into is actually where I guess it would be 36 years ago, 1986. So what was that? What's the math on that? Something close to that. It was when we had the Chernobyl disaster.
It's coming up to 30 years, 40 years.
Yeah, 86 would be, because I was born in 89,
No, it's coming up to 40
36,
years. Yeah.
so it was Chernobyl that was on that same sorrow cycle, which is so interesting because if you look at the news, what have they been talking about a lot? It's those nuclear reactors in Ukraine. So I think that's a huge deal. The other thing that's a huge deal before I even, get to Uranus North Node, which will be at 18 Taurus, and then Uranus will retrograde, is Uranus coming to 15 degrees is something I've been looking at a lot lately. I think that whenever we get those outer planets coming to the 15 mark of any fixed sign is a big deal because it squares the 0 point of the cardinal signs. Oh, I'm sorry, it's semi-squares, a 45-degree angle to, for instance, Aries, 0 Aries, which is the 0 point of astrology, which ironically enough, where the day that Uranus came into 0 Aquarius was Fukushima, another nuclear disaster. So Uranus is going to semi-square that, which is a hard aspect to that point. And simultaneously, we're going through the same sorrow cycle eclipse with Chernobyl. So
doesn't bode well, does it?
I'm, looking at that and I'm like, wow, what's going to go on with nuclear aspects? I think money's big as it comes into that too, and value and what's it all about. And, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors with Jupiter and Neptune and Pisces, but there's also this very beautiful spiritual gift and connection to something more that's out there that's trying to show us a better way and how to get out of our, these subconscious patterns that do limit us so that we can break out. And then of course, like right as that Uranus is there, Jupiter is actually going to ingress into Aries and come into that 0 point and be in that semi-square to Uranus. So and then retrograde back and they're going to semi-square again. And very, a lot. And of course, just Jupiter in its sense is an amplifier. So when we look at Jupiter, right now in Pisces, well, it's amplifying a lot of things. It's amplifying, you could look at how big of a deal fentanyl is, or how big of, people are escaping. You can look at war. I think Pisces has that a little bit of a war effect. The age of Pisces there's been a lot of war in the age of Pisces since the beginning. There is this chaotic side to Pisces. So there's kind of this amped up, energy of chaos. There's also people really finding something more right now too. So I think it's not all bad. It's just, that's where it also comes into these splits in life. Is like, oh, okay, like, how are you living right now? Like for me, I'm feeling pretty good every day when I wake up. Like, I don't know. I'm like happy to be here for, some people aren't happy to be here and they kind of can escape into whatever route they want. But Jupiter's an amplifier. So we're seeing amplified sort of chaos or, spiritual awakening, either one right now, like a lot of that. And then Aries would be Mars, it's war. And I think that that's very fascinating coming in with the big outer planet ingresses. I think that's, a lot. And we're kind of going to have the rug pulled out from under us too, because Jupiter's going to retrograde at 8 degrees of Aries and go back to 28 Pisces. And anything that retrogrades over that Aries point, I mean, we're talking like, oh gosh, we finally closed out this cycle and we're ready to start something new and identify with what that's going to be. And then nope, right back into, so what are we going to get sucked back into, which is very Piscean also. And what is it going to have to do with war? And is it going to be about nuclear stuff or money? And those eclipses are a big deal to me. And then there's also the Pluto return of the United States, which will be July 10th, which is the actual Pluto return, because yes, Pluto already crossed over America's Pluto and it's a long transit. Pluto transits take 2 years to fully go with the retrogrades and the crossing over. But on the 4th of July, 1776, it was, retrograde at 27, I believe 31 of Capricorn, and it was retrograde. So Pluto's still direct, it's still charging forward, but it's about to come back and make that really exact Pluto return at the 158 year or 148 year anniversary, 248 year anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And that's going to be a big deal. And then it's going to come over that again. So it's just a lot of Plutonian stuff too, and that's kind of intense death rebirth energy in itself. To see, you know, if the country of America will hold on to its integrity through everything that's going on, and what it was really built on, which was that piece of paper, Declaration of Independence, you know. Big deal, of course. And then dealing with all the finance stuff with these nodes in Taurus, Scorpio, it's very interesting because, well, the dollar is the world reserve currency. So America's Pluto return seems to have a bigger effect on the world than maybe other countries' Pluto returns. And we are seeing a lot of worldwide events. And what's the, you know, what's going on? What is the, you know, I think we all are ready to kind of see what is actually going on, but we're not at a place to actually see what it is. And then the other big thing that just kind of blows my mind, of course, we're going to have in October, it's going to be October 25th, we get a solar eclipse in Scorpio. Actually, I think it's October 10th. Anyways, right there in October, we get the solar eclipse in Scorpio with the South Node. And I think that that just brings up so much manipulation to just it's kind of volcanic sort of aspects getting uncovered, but the South Node's there. So it's, I think there's a lot of illusion to it, but there is this death rebirth energy with that and the Pluto return. That's a big deal. And then just, it's actually going to be the 25th. And then just 5 days after that eclipse, Mars is going to station retrograde at 25 Gemini. And what trips me out about America's chart is, in America's chart, it is a 20, what is it, a 21 degree Gemini Mars. So Mars is getting its Mars return, but with a retrograde over it, with a Pluto return. Like, that's rare. For instance, the United States, I don't think they've had a Mars retrograde in Gemini. We haven't had a Mars retrograde in Gemini that actually crossed over, retrograded over the United States Mars since 1975. So it's not like that just happens every 2 years. Like, yeah, Mars goes over it, but a retrograde over Mars, which is like literally cutting away so much, and with the Pluto return, and there's just so much that looks like big changes are taking place, and from the ground up. Especially in America's chart, it is a Sag rising. So we're looking at that Mars, which is in the 6th house of that chart, but it is sort of that 7th house energy of relationships and people. But Mars also rules the bottom of the chart with the Aries in the 4th house. So there is something about this whole sort of cutting away and restructuring of where things are going. And it looks like a lot of things that we thought growing up we were gonna live through are not gonna happen, and that we're in this whole new reality of how to build up from this new sort of place. And I don't know, it feels very I'm wearing a sweater with the Tower card on it, but it does feel very tower like. But I don't think it's worth being afraid of tower moments. I think it's worrying about, you know, what we are trying to rebuild for the future, and how we can keep a positive mindset and keep our minds sharp when it does look like we chose a very sort of chaotic time to be here.
You literally took the words right out of my mouth, because I talk with a lot of people and say, we chose to come here at this time. And for the light workers, you especially chose to be here, not just to grow yourself as a soul and sort of level up, but to help others move through this time. And there are days where it's a little bit harder to remember that than others.
It absolutely is. And I was looking too at these eclipses, because that solar eclipse in Scorpio is so interesting, because it will be visible. I mean, it literally just covers Russia and Europe. And whenever you get, you know, the area on the map that gets hit with the solar eclipse, they get it the hardest. And the solar eclipse that happens in April, on April 30th, that's more down by the Antarctic Circle and in the Pacific Ocean. So it's like really, it's cold down there. It's very isolated. So there's something about that kind of shoots into my mind right now. But it's not like I don't know, that by the end of this, by October, we're going to start to see some really some really interesting things, especially I think in Europe and the Russian areas, and that, yeah, those eclipses are going to be gnarly. So I don't know, circle the eclipses on your calendar and see what happens. I don't think it's worth being afraid of. Again, for anybody watching, this is the best time, especially right now up until April, to really start creating a life that you want and to just go for it if you feel called for it. Like, why do we restrict ourselves right now? If you were going to go for it, go for it. Like, so, okay, maybe the world does have a nuclear, like, why not just go out at least feeling like you did something you wanted to do? I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think that would be too easy. We didn't come here to just leave. Like, we got to get through this. So, and I think we will, but it's wild to look at. I'm excited because I'm weird like that, but I don't know. To me, it's just an opportunity, I guess, to see what we can make it. Like, what can we make it? Like, if we're light workers and we came here for a reason to bring light, like, why would we not get the opportunity to shine that light in what maybe looks like or is projected to be the darkest of times?
Absolutely. And you've talked about a lot of these cycles, and they're all sort of longer lasting cycles, but is there a break in the astrology? Because obviously people are tired right now. They've had 2020, they've had 2021, and they keep, looking for this return to normal, which is clearly not happening. But is there a moment where people can just kind of stop and breathe? Or are we just on this roller coaster for the next, 20 years and just have to kind of hold on and ride it out?
I really think 2025 is going to be where we're going to see, I guess, all the decisions we made and what that can look like. I think that sextile triangle with the outer planets is the most beautiful thing like ever. Like, it's just so rare to see all those planets link up like that. They move so slow. It's just not, your sextile, and a sextile triangle, for anybody that doesn't know, is a trine between Pluto and Uranus, which will be in air signs, and they're going to be making a 60-degree sextile, each of them, to Neptune in Aries. So it's very harmonious. And I think that there's something so beautiful about this transformation that we're going through. And just Pluto at this last few degrees of Capricorn is so intense, and we feel like we are beat down and broken, and the top of the mountain is as steep as ever, especially in Capricorn. But we got to remember that mysticism within us, and remember that to be a mystical sea goat, you have to just get to the top of the mountain. Nobody knows how that goat with a fish's tail got to the top of the mountain, but it did.
Mm.
So I think we have to remember that we have the magic within us to get up this heap, and it's just not the time to give up. If there was ever a time to not give up, it's Pluto finishing up in Capricorn. You can't give up. You made it this far, and you should be proud of yourself for making it to the last sixth of the mountain, like, but keep going, and you got to get tactical. It's steep, it's slippery, there's ice, there's a lot going on. So you got to be smart about how you reach that peak. And I think that if you do keep going and you do get to that peak and you make the smart decisions and trust your guidance and trust your gut on what's right to you, that you are going to have a new sense of your individual freedom, and it's going to show you something really beautiful of how to create from that moving forward. So I think that, the second half of this decade has potential to be so much better than the first beginning of this 2020 decade. But we're going to have to make changes to get there, or else people are going to try and make changes that I don't think are going to be very favorable to the collective. But that's just an opinion of mine.
I think that's a perfect way to sort of finish this up. So for those people that are just discovering you for the first time and want a reading with you, what's a website they need to go to?
www.fixedairmoon.com, and you can get there through the consultations tab, or you can just do fixedairmoon.com/consultations, and it'll take you to the page.
And I will put the link in all the descriptions of the videos, and all of your social media handles are Fixed Air Moon.
Yeah, at Fixed Air Moon. Somehow, I didn't think that name was very creative, but somehow it wasn't used anywhere. So guess it was meant to be mine.
I was going to say, when it's meant to be, it's meant to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
Bryan, thank you so much. I have loved being able to share your story and also get your feedback on where you see this year going and the sort of years moving forward. And we will sit down again soon and have another conversation.
I hope we do. And I really appreciate you for having me on, and I hope that people enjoy it.
And we've got to get people over to High Vibe because we have some more stuff coming up that people don't know
Yeah.
about yet.
Yeah. High Vibe is going to be where it's at. I don't know if you guys watching know, but they are trying to do some shady social media bans to a lot of hashtags that you might enjoy if you're into astrology, such as hashtag astrology, hashtag tarot, spirituality, even religion is about to kind of get censored. So, if you want to get uncensored content of spiritual matters and astrology and tarot, David has built the place. It's highvibe.tv, and I would recommend checking it out over there before who knows what happens, and maybe we're not able to get content out in this space through the traditional socials. So
Right.
consider
But
it.
these exciting things are coming and we're not going to stop, whether it be on these platforms or at High Vibe. So make sure you check it out, guys. Bryan, thank you.
Thank you so much.